Hey guys, Zephina here, and I apologize if you hear any noise in the background. It's because I'm recording at an earlier time of day than I usually do, so odds are there are going to be more background noises because people are actually awake. That being said, this is a story that I've wanted to tell for a while, but just have never really gotten around to doing, and I'm finally going to do it. And yeah, let's just get into it. This is the story of my final farewell to my high school and how I finally got to say to a couple of the staff what I had been wanting to say to them for 4 years. Now, disclaimer, please do not try to do what I did because I had a very unique circumstance that I will explain in the upcoming story. That being said, the first part is a lot of explanation, so I'll try to keep this entertaining, but it is explanation, but it'll all make sense and it's worth it in the story. That being said, I know high school can be hell, or at least it was for me, but not in the way that most people would expect it to be. I never really struggled with my fellow peers not accepting me or bullying because of the negative demeanor I usually gave off, but that is a topic for a video all its own. My main issue with the school I went to was the staff. I have 100 stories, good and bad, about the teachers at my high school, but my favorite of which took place on my last day of my senior year. Before we get into all that, let me explain a little bit about my life up to that point. I was the good kid, quiet, respectful, etc. I had a perfect disciplinary record, never even had detention for being late. However, at that point in my life, I was really struggling with some mental issues, namely depression and stuff like that. So I had managed to talk my therapist and the principal of my high school to get me a modified schedule. What that means is, since I only needed 2 credits to graduate, I only had to take those 2 classes. But we had 4-period class days, each class an hour and a half long. So I was only there for 2nd and 3rd period, meaning that during 1st and 4th, I pretty much didn't exist in the school's roster, to the point that I had to sign in as a guest if I needed to make up a test during 1st or 4th period, so that they would have some way of knowing that I was on campus. Trust me, this is important later. Anyway, as is the case at the end of any school year, we were taking final exams, and as everyone who has ever attended public school knows, school schedules can become complete messes during testing. So I will attempt to give you a brief rundown of how testing worked at my school, and I'll try to put it up on screen so you guys have a visual for it as well. We had 2 weeks for testing. Week 1 was for block classes. These were classes that you had every day for a semester. And week 2 was A-Day, B-Day testing, classes you had every other day for the entire year. I hope you're still with me because it hasn't even gotten confusing yet. Next, and I will never forget this because it was the same way every single year. In week 1, on Monday we had our 1st period block exam, followed by 2 hours to study for our 4th period block or A-Day, B-Day exams. Tuesday, we had our 2nd period block exam, followed by 2 hours to study for our 3rd period block or A-Day, B-Day exams. Wednesday, we had our 3rd period exam, followed by studying for our 2nd period A-Day, B-Day exams. Thursday, we had our 4th period block exam, followed by 2 hours to study for our 1st period A-Day, B-Day exams. Friday was a makeup day for any missed block exams. If you thought that was weird, week 2 was even worse. On Monday, we had our 1st period A and B day exams, followed by 2 hours to study for our 4th period A and B day exams. However, if you had already taken a block exam for your study period, you did one of 3 things. You went to class and played board games. If your teacher was nice, you could go to the gym or the cafeteria to socialize with friends. Or if you had a car and a note from a parent, you could just go home. This applies to each study period throughout week 2. Now back to the schedule. On Tuesday, we took our 2nd period A-Day, B-Day exams, followed by 2 hours to study for our 3rd period A-Day, B-Day exams. Wednesday, we had our third period 8A B-Day exams, followed by studying for our second period 8A B-Day exams. Thursday, we had our fourth period 8A B-Day exams, followed by 2 hours to study for our first period 8A B-Day exams. Friday was the last chance to make up any tests at all. If you've managed to follow me this far, good for you, because it was just as confusing to deal with as it was to listen to. For the love of God, I mean, just look at this thing. On Wednesday, we studied for the freaking test that we had on Tuesday, and on Thursday, we would study for the test that we had on Monday. This makes no sense to literally anyone ever, and if I'm right, I have this slightly off, which means it was even more confusing. What the heck was the schedule? Here's what you need to know, though. Due to the fact that I was only taking a block class for my second period and a block class for my third period, my schedule went something like this. Week 1, Monday, I wasn't even supposed to be on campus. Tuesday, I took my second period exam and attended my third period study session. Wednesday, I took my third period exam and went home because I didn't need to study for an exam I had already taken. Thursday, I wasn't even supposed to be on campus, and Friday, since I didn't have a test to make up, I would have been in first period class, which means, you guessed it, I wasn't even supposed to be on campus. Week 2, I literally had no A-Day, B-Day classes, and since I had already taken my exams, my teacher said I didn't need to attend their class, so I literally did not have to be at campus at all during week 2. Now, this is where the story begins. For some reason, despite the chaos of those 2 weeks, the school insisted on handing out yearbooks during testing. It makes no more sense to me now than it did then. I had pre-ordered my yearbook online months prior, which essentially meant that they had a book reserved for me to pick up when they came in. They did, however, have a specific day or days in which they handed these books out. They had them on Friday of week 1, as well as Tuesday and Thursday of week 2. And as all of you should know at this point, those were the days I was not supposed to be on campus. So after school ended on Tuesday of week 1, I went to the front office to talk to someone about getting my book on a different day, because I was not about to drive 7 miles to school to go through the trouble of signing in just to pick up a book on a day when I wasn't even supposed to be there. The lady I spoke to had issues with me from freshman year, so we'll call her Miss B for no particular reason. I went in and told Miss B my problems with the pickup dates, and told her that I had prepaid for my book. Being kind and knowing there was probably nothing she could do for me right then, I asked if I could pick up my book the next day on Wednesday. Her response was, "The pickup days are Friday of week 1 and Tuesday and Thursday of week 2. And yes, that's actually what she sounded like. I explained once more that I understood that, but my schedule prevented me from getting my book on pickup dates. She just repeated the same answer, so I told her she had 24 hours to figure out a way to get the book for me, and that I would be back on Wednesday to pick it up. Fast forward, the next day rolls around, I take my test and head for the front office to retrieve my yearbook. I tell Miss B why I'm there, and she tells me, "The pickup dates are Friday of week 1 and Tuesday and Thursday of week 2. By this point, I was getting angry, and I told her, "I was here yesterday. I explained to you why I couldn't pick the books up on any of the normal pickup dates. You've had 24 hours to figure out a solution with the other staff members, and you have done nothing. I prepaid for my book, so I will be getting it." Her response? "Not if you aren't here on the pickup dates." And I swear to you, she said it mockingly. I very clearly remember a very mocking tone in her voice. Remember that I had issues with this woman. By this point, I was fuming. But then something struck me. The school had no power over me at that point. It was my last day. They couldn't give me detention or anything because I could just walk out and never come back. The only punishment they could give me was to hold my diploma for 2 weeks. which didn't matter to me because I was going to be on vacation and wouldn't be able to pick it up until after the withholding date anyway. Or they could keep me from walking in graduation. But the thing about that punishment, I'd already opted out of walking earlier that year because I didn't want to be stuck in a hot room in hideous green robes for 3 hours with over 500 people that I had despised for 4 years, just to walk across a stage and have them hand me a folder for my diploma. So my unique situation meant that as long as I didn't become physical, which would have gotten the police involved, I could say whatever I wanted. Understanding that, I said once more that I would be unable to be there for the pickup dates, so I needed the book now. When she declined again, I demanded a refund. She said she couldn't give me the refund, so I demanded the book once more. She told me this: "You cannot get a refund, and if you don't come on the pickup dates, we cannot get you your yearbook." It was then that I leaned against the wall, taking on the least threatening pose I could manage, but this was my exact response: "The hell I can't." For a brief moment she looked like I'd just lunged at her, but when she regained her bearings, her response was this: "With language like that, you won't be walking in graduation." I remember smiling at this point, and not just any smile, it was a shit-eating grin. Occam's razor. I'm not walking anyway. It was in that exact moment that she realized she had no power over me, but what made it all the worse was she understood that I knew that. She proceeded to tell me in a shaky voice that I couldn't get the book or the refund. Again. That was when I took out my phone. I pulled up the call screen and told her that I would get the item I paid for, or a reimbursement, or the police would be called for theft. She quickly tried to defuse the situation by calling for the vice principal, in which we had the same conversation, ending with me threatening to call the police. Finally, the principal himself was called to speak with me. We'll call him Mr. M. Well, the second Mr. M walked into the room, he looked stunned. And I can completely see why. There was this goody-two-shoes twig of a girl in the most non-threatening stance, and yet had 2 of his staff calling him in fear. At this point, I was beyond frustrated and angry, but I told him the situation. He began to tell me exactly what Miss B and the vice principal had said, but I didn't let him finish. "Look, I've already heard it, so I'm going to cut to the chase here. I'm not even supposed to be on campus for the pickup dates for the yearbook. So here's what is going to happen. I will retrieve the yearbook I paid for, a refund for said book, or I will call the police, because apparently I'm the only one in this room who realizes that not receiving an item which has been paid for, or a reimbursement, is considered theft in the state of North Carolina. I also know from taking the yearbook class last year that the books are in a box in the library 2 doors down. So how hard is it for one of you to retrieve one of them and bring it here?" He opened his mouth to reprimand me, but I cut him off again. "Oh, I forgot. I'm not walking in graduation, by my choice, and you can't hold my diploma forever. So don't even start on your high horse about punishing me for the way I'm speaking to you." He glanced over to me, and seemed to be the only one who understood that my seemingly out-of-place, relaxed position had been a strategic power play. He had no more power over me than Miss B or the vice principal. I swiftly dialed 911 into my phone and held it up for him to see so that he would know I wasn't bluffing. The book, the money, or I call the police. Oh, and please make your choice quickly because I'm losing my patience. After a moment, the look of anger in his gaze turned to horror. "Wait. You're the girl with the modified schedule, aren't you?" I very clearly remember looking at him, tilting my head to one side like a cat, and this was my response. "Well, no shit. I had to have you sign off on it. Yes, I'm the girl with the modified schedule. Do you need to see my ID or my test schedule to prove it?" He assured me that I would get my book and that there was no need to get the police involved. So I placed my phone back in my pocket and he called the library. A few moments later, a very scared-looking woman rushed into the room with a yearbook and a piece of paper in her hands. She sounded terrified. "But please initial next to your name." I did as she asked, and she quickly put the book in my hands and rushed out again. I actually felt bad for her. She was absolutely petrified of me, and yet I had no reason to be angry with her. Once she was gone, I actually dared to laugh. 2 letters. It took all 3 of you, and me threatening to call the police, for me to only need to write down 2 letters to get this book. Are you kidding me? At this point, the principal just looked frightened. "You have your book. If there's nothing else you need, you are dismissed." He and the vice principal rushed out of the room as I grabbed my things to leave. Once they were gone, I cast my last words over to Miss B before walking out. I'll never forget what I said. "Have a nice summer, bitch." Those were genuinely my last words as a high school student. After that, I would walk out of the building, and the only time I would ever go back would be to pick up my diploma a few weeks later. But that is a story for another video, and trust me, that story is just as funny as this one, and could be a video all its own. But this video's gone on long enough. Finally, I want to say this. When it comes to this channel and the stories that I tell, I try to convey some kind of a message, whether that be to learn, about mental health and stuff like that, or to convey a positive message like in the retail associate story where I helped the girl find a whole new wardrobe. That's just good-hearted. There's always something to be learned or something good to take away. This story is not one of those stories. I just wanted to share it because I think it's funny. But it brings me back around to what I said at the beginning of the video, which is please, for the love of God, do not try to do what I did, because I had such a unique circumstance that let me be able to do all this, because partially it was my senior year, it was my very last day, I was never going to be going back to that school as a student. The other thing was I had opted out of walking in graduation, not because of disciplinary action, but because I didn't want to walk in graduation. I also had taken Yearbook the year before, so I knew the protocol and the procedure of how the yearbooks were handed out. I knew where they were and how easy it was to get one if you needed to. I knew the principal personally because of the aforementioned modified schedule. There were so many things that went into making this situation, not completely... I didn't get arrested, essentially. But I can't guarantee that it would work for you guys. I knew the people I was dealing with, I knew what my situation was, and I read the room well enough to be able to do what I did. That doesn't mean that you're going to get away with it. So don't try to do what I did. As a final little tidbit, I just want to say that the yearbook that I ended up getting that day, I have never opened, I have never looked through. Because quite frankly, I don't care all that much about what the book is as much as what it stands for, and it's just when I finally got to go off on the people who'd been going off on me for 4 years. So that's what it is. It's kind of more of a trophy than for memories, I guess. But like I said, please don't try to do what I did. I'm just warning you guys. This may be fun to watch, and it may be fun to listen to and hear how I did it, but my circumstances were very, very unique. And I don't want your parents to be mad at you because you tried to go after your front office staff or your teachers the same way I did and then use me as an out. Please don't do that. Please no. I try to be a good influence. This is one of those cases where it's do as I say, not as I do. Please. But I try to be a good influence. This is the one time I'm specifically saying don't do what I did. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this story from me, and yeah, I know that I love telling this story, but I hope you guys enjoyed it as well, and I will see you in the next video. Until then, Zephina, out.
You're a monster.